Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Betsports Golf here for our first look at the Cognizant Classic. PGA National, I think, is probably the easier way to talk about this. The course does not change, though we will dance through sponsors here, and it's kind of a historical thing on the PGA Tour. Artist formerly known as the Honda Classic, joined here, as always, by the man himself, Ron Kloss, PGA Splits 101. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, doing well. Did the Knapp versus Valimaki battle have you on the edge of your seat? I don't. I know some people were enthralled. I know people have different opinions, but it's good to see someone new win, and Knapp definitely is a perfect fit for that course.
Yeah.
But like last week it's a perfect example of why golf is so volatile, because you look at the leaderboard and it was like playing DraftKings or betting, and it's just like, wow, don't have that guy, and then down the list. So it was a frustrating week from that perspective, but I guess that's probably what you need to expect in events like that.
Yeah, I think part of it too, I was thinking of it on the weekend. We'd only had two iterations of that event. So, we feel like still, look at Knapp. I mean, absolute bomber. So it was just harder to feel that we were really set in terms of like what matters there. Because I thought we saw a little bit of a different leaderboard in terms of, not just strictly bombers, which was a little tricky. I had tweeted it out. You and I had talked about it too. Like just before we started last Monday, on an odd screen that we use, I saw a Knapp available at 80, clicked into the book, and the book hadn't actually posted odds yet. So I don't know if it was a state by state thing or whatnot, but I had a little bit of like, Knapp at 80 was interesting to me. Knapp at 45, which he was everywhere else, part of it also felt like, oh, that's a great number. That's going to be gone very soon. I couldn't get to the mental hurdle of seeing the 80 and then taking the next step to bet the 45 was something I couldn't do. And then, FOMO. I left. I went and hit balls at the range instead of watching the end of it because I couldn't take it. So it's so hard to land the plane this year, right? So then you feel like, all right, that guy was interesting. We limited events. We hadn't seen him much. It's really hard to kind of get there in the handicap at 45. And kudos, it felt like a community win. So like we were on the sidelines. It's something that a lot of people were on too. So yeah, we'll move forward to PGA National this week. This got like bastardized last year in the signature event role, right? This was stuck in the middle of 5 signature events. We had 2 in the front and 2 in the back, and no one came to, I think, one of the better courses on tour, an event that I love to watch. I think it's a great finishing stretch. The risk reward on some of these holes, the water that comes into play. And then now we are in the Florida swing, which I think is definitely an interesting part of the calendar here. What are some just major things at the very, very top before we dig into any of the numbers that we should be kind of looking at, or any guys you want to highlight that are just like, hey, these are some Florida guys? Maybe we'll touch on that at the top through the rabbit hole.
I think a couple changes people need to be aware of, and some people are being a little taken by surprise, but the par 4 10th hole has been lengthened by 20 yards, and so it's been converted from very difficult, kind of longish 510-yard par 4 to 530 yards. It's going to be more scoreable. It's not going to change really the difficulty of the course itself, but you're probably adding around 4 shots to the course is going to get a little easier in that perspective. Also looking at it a little deeper, fairways have been widened a little bit this year. So this had one of the narrower fairways around 30 yards wide on average. So a little bit wider than that. So maybe a little easier off the tee. The rough is 2.25 inches this year instead of 2.5. And, reading more about kind of the weather in this area of Florida so far this year. So because of how wet and cold it's been so far, the rough is pretty much 100% rye overseed. So very little Bermuda is coming through. Now we do have Bermuda greens, obviously, but the rough is not Bermuda this week. So a little easier around the greens from that perspective. It does kind of vary from year to year based on how warm it gets. And, there has always been a rye overseed, but the Bermuda tends to come through a little more when it's warmer. But yeah, like you said, this is a very interesting course. You got 15 holes with water danger. And so you're always kind of on the edge of your seat. When you just look at pictures, you go back and watch, clips from this course, and there's just water. It's seems on every single hole. And, it's a course where you probably one of the toughest ball striking courses on tour, especially when you get past 150 yards on approach. And, a lot of people, you look at this, it's only, 7,145 yards. And so you think, oh, short course, it's going to be similar to the other short courses, but it's a little different just because there's a lot of tight dog legs. There's a lot of forced layups. It's a less than driver course off the tee. And so you really don't have that many wedges. I think it's something like around 65% of approach shots are 125 to 200 yards, which is well above the tour average. And so it's a little bit different, not your standard short course. But yeah, it is all around. Like, it's the second. Last year was a little easier, but when you go back 5 years, it is the second toughest annual course on tour, only behind Augusta National. So that'll give you kind of an idea of how difficult it plays here. And, right around 10 under par, I'd expect that to go up to maybe around 13, 14 under this year.
Yeah, cut line was, again, in an easier year last year, cut line was +1. So you're still able to, make the weekends being over par. So you mentioned, sounds like they're trying to make it a little bit easier. I still think you see probably, low to mid teens in terms of where you need to get to win this event, which I think is interesting. And again, a better field overall too, where we have like 13 of the top 40 or so. Last year, again, it was just a really tough event because of where it fell in the schedule. It was really tough to, play 5 weeks in a row, and essentially what people were being asked to do comparatively to where we're at this year with, Mexico being shifted down. That kind of forced itself into like a natural bye week for players as we kind of shift into this Florida swing where some events people want to play. People want to play API. Obviously players that are available and eligible to play at Sawgrass are going to be playing at the Players and stuff like that. So this is a better, I think, starter to get you ready for what's coming here on the East Coast. So let's dig in here to just take a quick look here at the opening odds board, courtesy of our friends over at FanDuel. They obviously shop around. For the most part at this time, we're getting the majority of books posted, but Rory here as the favorite 6-1. That's a little bit higher at other places. Cam Young at 20, Russell Henley, just a guy that fits a lot of these Florida tracks. We get these, Georgia Bulldogs, Straka, Keith Mitchell, a lot of these guys that have played pretty well. Henley's won this event all the way back in 2014, but he has won it. Matthew Fitzpatrick's played well in Florida in his career. Minwoo Lee, Tom Kim, JT Poston, all at 30. Eric Cole, kind of the darling of this event last year, where it was Cole and Kirk down the stretch. Cole 33 here on FanDuel. Sanjay has been a Bermuda, Florida guy, has had some success and won this back in 2020. 35, pretty big number for Sanjay, though. Form has not been great. Shane Lowry, another guy, like, you typically would see this as like one of the first events for a lot of the Euros that call Orlando and the Florida Jupiter area home. So you get a lot of these guys that have played well and pretty familiar. Shane Lowry is one of those guys. He's available here at 35 is kind of the top of the board. So yeah, obviously shop around your openers here on a Monday morning, because it's kind of where you will find some discrepancies in the pricing market. Things kind of flatten out for the most part as we get into like Monday evening, Tuesday morning. So it is a difficult time to jump in if you have not handicapped the event yet. But again, Ron's preview you can check out on the site over at BetSperts Golf. But we're going to dig into the rabbit hole this morning. That's probably why you're here. We want to get our thoughts on some of the data and stuff that matters for the Honda Classic here. So let's jump in. Again, you can get some other stuff. We have some evergreen articles that are highlighted here on the site as well. Ron did some of this work in the off season. You just get a sense of Bermuda versus non-Bermuda courses and who performs well. West Coast versus the rest of the year. First round versus fourth round scoring, and some stuff that maybe you want to look at top of the leaderboard on Thursday. There's some data there for you as well, or you could just go into the rabbit hole and chop it up. If you are not familiar, this is a customizable PGA stat database that allows you to do anything you could possibly imagine with this data. And I think it tells a better story than some of the other stuff you've probably been familiar with out there. Pretty easy to use, but let's jump into it, Ron. Give folks a sense of what we want to look at here. And let's go, I would challenge you a little bit into some of the stuff that you talk about being off the board. You mentioned less than driver course. That's unique, and that's something that we can look at. What do you think is valuable? Florida, Bermuda splits. What do you want to kind of get into and show the folks this morning?
So Really quick, my partner here, Ryan Noonan, is currently sitting at 9,999 followers. Now, I was told he has a big prize for his 10,000th follower.
I I do not.
So that is wide open right now to anybody who wants to take that 10,000 spot. So just throwing that out there.
Thanks,
No,
man.
yeah, you're definitely correct. He This course, when you get into just how it's structured, how the holes are set up, on the rabbit hole, we have less than driver. I think that's a big thing this week because it does, off the tee with all the water, you want someone definitely who's accurate. So accuracy is very important this week. And so that is definitely one thing that I'll be having in every single one of my models. So yeah, if you go down, you see, off the tee club and select less than driver. I also think, when you get into some of the other kind of splits that you mentioned there, this course is in Florida, and so definitely part of the Florida swing. So, we can go that route where you look at the event season, and that was one of the tweets you had yesterday. That was a really good one. When you just if you just want to look at courses in Florida, you can select by state, you can select by the season. With different routes, you could go with that one. And so, yeah, I think those are two big ones. And, also we could get into, scoring conditions of whether difficult and very difficult. But yeah, there's a lot that we can get into here. But I definitely agree that, with ball striking being so important, just kind of taking a little angle at, other less than driver courses. And even if you want to look at less than driver and then just look at off the tee itself, look at who does well on approach, and these types of courses as well.
Yeah. So I like this exercise round because I think this is something that should lead you to. I don't think the rabbit hole is going to give you the answers to the test, but what it should do is spark some interest in terms of where else do I want to look in doing my research. Now I pop in here, going into the filter by condition section, and again you can see here there are a ton of ways to chop up this data. Some unique things that we have that you will not find anywhere else is this off the tee club. And this is something that Ron has done by hand. So there's no mix up of what is capturing this data. This is, charted by Ron, captured and broken down by Ron. Less than driver is, I think, an edge. Now, again, I kind of want to look, especially for some of this stuff, confirmation bias in a sense. Look at this group when I search strokes gained total on less than driver off the tee. This feels like PGA National, Shane Lowry, Eric Cole, Russell Henley, Alex Noren, Denny McCarthy, Justin Rose, Daniel Berger, Adam Svensson, Taylor Pendrith, Minwoo Lee. Connors has had some great ball striking here. Obviously, putting is a different thing. Rory hasn't been here in a while, but has won here. Hubbard, Fitz. This feels like there's some there to me when I search this. And again, once you've selected this, you can look at any of these, categories, strokes gained off the tee, specifically. Again, Sanjay has won here. Hayden Buckley has played pretty well here. So, Tyler Duncan was in the top 5 here last year. So there are some corollaries to previous leaderboards when we start to break this down. The Florida stuff matters to me. So I think there's some overlap to what we see at some of the other Florida courses. Innisbrook, Sawgrass, API, difficult scoring conditions, a lot of water. Right. I'm not saying that they're all the same course, but I do think that, sometimes we talked about this, I think a couple weeks ago when we wanted to do this for California. My pushback there was there's some courses there that are just wildly different. It's really hard to try and draw a lot out of Pebble and Torrey, or PGA West. They're just vastly different, where I think these are kind of all playing in a similar space. I think it's a little bit more interesting. So let's back out and we'll look at this. You can go here into course region. You can literally go into courses and select all the courses as well. The course region is allowing you to do this in a one-click way. We'll apply this filter, and let's back up the time frame here. Well, this is actually the tweet that I sent, was the last 2 years. So you're getting a decent sample of Florida golf for most of these guys. Let's put a 8-round minimum, so we get guys that have at least played twice. Let's look at some guys that have performed well in Florida over the last 2 years. Again, some confirmation bias. Shane Lowry again at the top. Chris Kirk, winner of this event last year. Justin Suh, who's performed pretty well in these spots. Sepp Straka, winner here and has been in the mix. Daniel Berger, who saw a little bit of Berger in California. It wasn't great. Berger's not usually great in California anyway. Some of the tee to green stuff was decent. On and around the green wasn't, but that's typically a strength of his, and I feel it should probably be better there on Bermuda. And you could see here, Berger's getting us a pretty small sample. We can back out and look at some other stuff, but short game on Bermuda here in Florida is something that Berger does well. Davis Riley, we won at Innisbrook a couple years ago there. He's not playing particularly good golf, but he again has done well in Florida. Matthew Fitz, Russell Henley again, and then Rory and Cam, which makes a ton of sense. You also get Keith Mitchell, some of that Florida stuff there too. So I think those are really interesting things. I'm going to add this to a mixed condition model just so we can show folks what that looks like. I'll do the same. I'll go back and do the less than driver stuff because I thought that was impactful too, just to show people what that looks like when you build up a model on the site. What other stats are key that you're honing in on this week?
Yeah, so along with, scoring conditions, obviously you can select, since it is in the very difficult bucket, but if you wanted to broaden that out a little bit, you could go difficult as well. We definitely have course length here where it's definitely on the shorter side. And so not super short. So, what I'd like to do sometimes just to make sure I'm getting enough sample for some of these is I'll go very short, and then even average. And what that does is that at least takes out all the long courses. And so, it's just a way to look at it, maybe a little broader perspective. Water danger. So we have that filter, and this is definitely the high category. If we had very high, it would be at the very top because it does have the most water holes on tour. And then obviously, when you want to get into the greens, we've got Bermuda greens, and another one this week that, I don't mess with often is green firmness. And that's something I'm waiting on a little bit because typically these are firm every single year. But with all the rain they've had, it's been over 9 inches so far this year. Just kind of waiting to hear some on-course reports from some people down there and, how firm they actually are. But typically they do get, pretty firm here. And so that is another one to kind of monitor throughout the week. And then I guess I'll kind of close with this as far as for the rabbit hole. But when you get into, on the very bottom of that filter section is you can actually look off the tee, you can look on approach. And with this being, the most difficult course to gain strokes on approach, this is another handy one where you can, just get into some of, whether you're looking at Augusta National or some of these other really tough courses, just to kind of get a picture of how players have performed in the past on there. And there's a couple other ones if we have time we'll get to, but I think it's really important to get into those ball striking categories off the tee and approaches as looking at the difficult ones.
Yeah, those are all really good. I want to ask too how to capture, because there's so many ways to capture scrambling, stroke gain, short game. You are going to have to do that a little bit here. Is that how prevalent in your model is that going to be this week, and how do you think the best way to capture that is?
So it's a tricky week because the greens are really large here, 7,000 square feet on average. But we do see, because of the wind, so it's not right on the coast, but windy conditions have pretty much always come into play here. And then you have, some players who just get really shaky. So many of these greens are surrounded by water, and, it's just, don't have the exact studies, but, certain players just are not as good around those, water holes. And so, the greens will be missed here. And so for me, this is not really a week where I'm looking at, scrambling from the rough or from the short grass. The data doesn't really show much difference between those this week. So Definitely we'll be just looking at kind of scrambling. I know, people often ask, what's the difference between around the green and scrambling? There's not a lot, but scrambling is when you're trying to at least, get the par. And so when you miss the green, how often are you getting it, up and down for par? And so I think obviously with scoring being so difficult this week, that is going to be pretty big. And so, you see a lot of those guys, Lowry and, Sung Jae and so many of these guys have been good at scrambling. And so that's kind of how I'll approach short game this week.
Okay. Yeah, it's tricky. There's so many options. And it's just making sure that you're not double counting as much as you can. I mean, some of the stuff you're going to double count, right? If you add approach and you have tee to green, ball striking, there's some overlap. You're double counting. Leaning on, if you're going to double count anything, double count approach, right? That's fine. That's probably the most sticky stat week in and week out on the tour.
And I was going to say, just really quick. So another thing I just came to my mind is par three. So these are the most difficult par threes on tour, and so
Hmm.
we have filters for par three, 4, and 5 scoring, and so normally I don't get into that side of it, but when this is the most difficult par threes on tour, I think that is something that's interesting to look at. Who plays the really tough par threes well. And then one last thing, because I don't want to forget this, is another thing that it's not specifically on there, so you'd have to go and set this yourself. But there are a good handful of courses that are really good comps to PGA National, and so when you go to the course view, if you and I have this posted on the Discord, so if you're in there, you can see the courses that are very similar. And so courses like Bay Hill, Wiley, TPC Sawgrass, TPC Twin Cities with with all the water there. TPC Southwind is another really close fit, and so you can actually group these courses together in the course view in the rabbit hole, and you can kind of get a kind of perspective that way and see who has played those courses well. And so that's another thing that I'll definitely have done for a long time, and the rabbit hole makes it very easy now. And especially if you're looking for those courses by name, it'll be in the Discord and definitely in my article as well.
Love it. I think I got them there. And again, some confirmation bias. Guys who won here in the past: Sanjay, Rory, Hoagie, Henley, Ben Griffin showing up well. Again, smaller samples for some of these guys, but just looking at the last 2 years, if you want to kick that out, obviously you can mess around with that sample of data, but I think is interesting to see. Again, this is some of the optionality that you have in terms of what you could do with this stuff here at the rabbit hole. You can mess around. Again, we are showing this in rank. You can look at average or total or percent of rounds gained. So you want to understand how frequently someone is performing well in a particular metric. I think that's super useful in terms of strokes gained stuff. This floor ceiling filter I absolutely love. You want to get a sense of, again, I always reference it with spiked putting weeks, because that's the thing. We always hear of the Luke Lists of the world, Scotty Scheffler, right? Like 18 to green, it's immaculate. Can we get a spike putting week? Well, what does that look like? How frequently does that happen? And what's the range of spike? Is it gaining 1 stroke? Is it gaining 5 strokes? And you can see how frequently, depending on years, number of rounds, how frequently that is happening. So you want to see in this field, and again, you can obviously put on a Bermuda filter, get a sense of that, or you can keep on the Florida region piece and get a sense of what that looks like here too. So again, really, really useful stuff. Off the tee real quick before we wrap up, what are we looking to capture here other than less than driver stuff in terms of total driving, good drive percentage? What do you think you want to look at here this week in terms of off the tee?
So I think for me, it's going to be a little more nuanced this week. I think something I'm going to do for sure is go to that water danger filter, and I'm going to put that on high. And I'll do this probably for off the tee and approach, and just see which players, when there's a lot of water that comes into play. And, yeah, you got a, decent sample size there. And so, yeah, like the numbers, when you get into, you see kind of these names repeating themselves over and over. And it's just very interesting. I remember a couple of years ago, Chase Seaford, who's on the Korn Ferry Tour now. He's been on the PGA for a while, but I was looking at his numbers, and he was like one of the best players on tour, at courses that had a lot of water. And so, I asked him, I was like, is there any reason why you think this is like this? And he's like, oh yeah, well, I grew up in Florida. Like the course I grew up on had water on every single hole. And so, just like you say, some of that confirmation bias when you actually get anecdotes like that, and you can see, certain players, a lot of Florida guys grew up on these types of courses. And so it makes sense that they're going to be more comfortable, around all this water. So.
Yeah. And again, we're seeing some familiar names here. Rory at the top, Sanjay M, Cam Young, Keith Mitchell, Luke List. It's your top 5 in high water damage and strokes gained off the tee. And again, Tyler Duncan, another random name, but Tyler Duncan top 5 here last year. So and again, you're getting a fairly decent sample size over the last 2 years. 36 rounds, 50 rounds for some of these guys is what we're looking to capture. So yeah, some familiar names, some guys that have had success here or in Florida. So yeah, well, I'm going to throw this in just for the sake of showing folks how to run their model. We've added stuff again. When you click this little plus button to add it, you have the ability to add a little description. That's just for you. You don't have to add anything, but if you do, you'll be able to see what it is. Because again, if you add a bunch of different, like right here, see, we've added 4 strokes gained total categories. You click on this little icon here, it'll show you what the actual filters were. So what you're actually looking at. So this was looking at strokes gained total Florida. This is strokes gained total less than driver. This is strokes gained total on the shorter courses, because like Ron said, we wanted to rule out the longer courses. And this is strokes gained off the tee with high water damage. So again, you can add as many of these as you like. You can actually build as many of these models as you possibly want. You can see you can save as many. You can actually click this little button here too, download to a CSV, chop it up. You want to see what Ron and I are doing in our model. You want to see what some of other folks that use this tool have in their model this week. You can go here into the view expert ranking section, click in that and just see, again, not the answers to the test, but maybe a thought process that starts to trigger, oh, I'm not looking at that. That's very interesting, because I do the same thing. What's Ron looking at that I'm not capturing? Okay, I want to go down that rabbit hole a little bit and see what that is. Andy Lack, friend of the show, Inside Golf Podcast, uses it. His model saved in here too. I want to see what Andy's looking at. Andy uses more things than I do typically, right? Because there's so many different ways to do this. But what is Andy looking at that I maybe need to consider and maybe see someone, maybe it confirms someone that I'm already leaning on. I think it's a really interesting process to help build your own model and then to kind of see what things we're giving weight to that maybe you weren't. Again, just another cool resource here. So name the model and save it. And again, it'll be here forever. So we'll do this as a PGA National First Look Show. I'll save this here for folks if you want to see it. And you simply click save and generate model. You can mess around with the weights. I didn't, but obviously you want to weigh it out to 100. And this makes some sense. The top of our model here that we spit out. Number 1, Rory McIlroy, top of the board, 6-1, 7-1, some spots. Daniel Berger, again, limited sample, but has played terrific golf in Florida throughout his career. And again, as you can see, getting, I think here he's 5th over the last 2 years. I think he's 1st over the last 3 years, strokes gained total Florida. So decent sample of Berger having success. Shane Lowry, Sanjay M, Russell Henley, again, guys who have been at the top of the leaderboard or have won this event. Matthew Fitzpatrick, Keith Mitchell, Corey Connors, Chris Kirk, your defending champ, Adam Svensson rounds out the top 10. So again, some commonalities, even though this is not a course that typically has great sticky course history. This has been a spot where I looked at my notes last night, and last couple of years, I've gone a little light pre-tournament on outrights because there's a lot of volatility in this event. So again, because of the water, because of the finishing stretch, you can get to a spot where, there's a pretty long number on a guy here that's in the top 10 of what we're looking at right now that you had pre-tournament interest in, and all of a sudden isn't that far behind, but is kind of in the mix, and you're going to be able to get him at, a much larger number. So again, a million ways to skin a cat. And however you decide, do you like to bet your golf outrights or bet golf in general? I think you're going to have some live ad options here, some live betting and some round by round stuff in this week, Ron.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think it's a perfect course to do this on, just because of what you said. We haven't even talked about the bear trap, which is
right.
Kind of one of the 3 toughest holes on tour grouped together. Which a lot of volatility down the stretch, and I'll say this even about last week, just really quick, because I should have listened to the rabbit hole, because if distance and power off the tee and all that was a big part of your model last week, Jake Knapp was up there. So I probably should have trusted that a little bit more. I know the lack of sample size he had scared me away a little bit, but it's just, the rabbit hole, it's not the answer to everything, but it does kind of hone in on, at least a group of guys that you definitely want to target more than others this week.
Yep. Absolutely. So again, you can head over to BetSports Golf. You can check out Ron's extensive course preview, which I think you do not want to miss. If you are, again, seeing this the first time and it's of interest to you, again, take a look at the plans page. We have a really cheap way to do it as well. We've partnered with Vivid Picks. Again, parent company Vivid Seats, your secondary ticket market. Vivid Picks is a DFS pick'em site, similar to some other ones that are out there. We have a way to get access to all that we're doing at BetSports Golf for $5 for the rest of the year, which is an insane deal. So you can download Vivid Picks in the App Store. BetSports Golf is the promo code. You can, again, this is a free article that you can find on the site that gives you more information. They have a first deposit match up to $250. But again, all you need to do to activate this is deposit and play $5 on Vivid. Great deal. You get an email within like 48 hours telling you how to activate your BetSports Golf subscription and take advantage of the rabbit hole, get all of Ron's content, get in our Discord, get all the picks. Ron shares a lot of stuff that is Discord only. That does not make its way to Twitter. That does not make its way to an article. I think there's a ton of value in that too. So if you scroll down, Vivid, unfortunately, is only available in about 28 states. If you happen to be in one of the 22 that can't take advantage, DM us on Twitter at BetSports Golf, or if you're overseas, we've had a lot of folks reach out to us that are in the UK, love to cap golf as well. Contact us at betsportsgolf.com. We'll get you a discount on either your first week, first month, or the annual subscription, which is the best way to do it. Prices are going to be going up in the coming weeks, so we want you to take advantage of this. And there's no cheaper way than obviously through the Vivid deal. So check it out. All right, Ron. Anything else for the folks before we leave?
You capped it up pretty well, so we're good.
Awesome. Betting show tomorrow. BetSports Golf, BetSports YouTube channel. Subscribe there. Ron and our buddy Byron, the Model Maniac, will be here on Wednesday for your DFS needs. So subscribe, thumbs up, like, all that stuff before you take off. We'll see y'all next time. Thanks, everyone.